So here's one guy I was going to talk about. Actually, I was going to let Jess talk about him, so I'm first going to talk about him too. Carlos Wallace, kind of one of our habitual offenders. He is incarcerated right now for 10 years with the state, and he was one of our Violence Prevention Initiative offenders too.
Mr. Wallace has been somebody that we have dealt with for quite some time. Before I came to the road, I've been with the agency for 17 years. Before I came to the position that I'm in now, I worked patrol, I worked the street level drug unit, and then I worked in criminal investigations. And I have probably personally myself been arresting Mr. Wallace prior to him becoming an adult, as well into his adulthood. And all of his offenses, for the most part, did stem from possession or possession with intent. He was a known drug dealer in the area, often involving youth and stuff like that. So he's someone that we consistently have had problems with. Before dirt bikes, I guess, were very popular, Mr. Wallace always used to ride the trail here by the police station. He was one of the first ones, I guess, that kind of felt it was okay to ride around the city. So he has been a problem for the agency easily from the early 2000s, as you see on here. And that's somebody that we were able to identify as a mid to upper level drug dealer for within the city of Annapolis, and somebody that we determined that we needed to target because at the time, Bowman Court was an area that he had targeted, which was a housing authority property, and we had had lots of shootings, homicides, and stuff that had occurred over there. So when they were transitioning to private, I guess it's privately owned with some public assistance living there, we had opted some of these times were good times to make arrests for these people that were problematic in those communities for re-entry of residents that were going to go back and were not problematic.
And Mr. Wallace also, when he was at one of the call-ins, when he was picked up in 2010, when he was arrested, they found drugs on him. The state's attorney's office and the U.S. attorney's office worked fairly closely together, and it ended up staying with the state. It was forwarded to circuit court because they felt like they could get a longer sentence there because he only had the drugs on him. So, but he got 10 years without parole, which is a pretty decent sentence, and I know that the state's attorney that prosecuted was happy with that sentence. This is another one.
Delmarcus Branford is somebody that we had opted as an agency to target basically upon his release. I shouldn't say target, I guess, but somebody that we had opted to kind of follow. He was charged with a homicide when he was a juvenile, and he served up until, most juveniles can either be held till 18 or until they're 21. In this case of the homicide, it was not, I shouldn't say an intentional homicide. He was in a stack with his friends like our SWAT team does. They stack up and they have a point cover and a couple other guys in the stack. Mr. Branford was at the rear of the stack. He has not had weapons training like police, and he had his finger on the trigger and accidentally killed his friend when his friend turned around to say, "Hey, are you guys ready?" So
they were getting ready to go in and rob a dice game.
They were going to rob a dice game in the Robinwood community. When he was released on his juvenile charges, he again started selling in the Newtown area and became problematic for us. So at that time we decided, obviously, his 6 years that he was incarcerated, nothing had happened. He's back to the same stuff that he was doing, so they ended up doing a case on him.
Mm-hmm. And he actually did go federal. He ended up being prosecuted in the federal system and is serving 10 years for his CDS with intent charge as well. This is just
We're going to talk about some of our partnerships that we have in a little bit more detail.
So like we said at the beginning, kind of the most important thing is the partnerships that we've developed through this Safe Streets model. We partner with the Department of General Services and the AA County Sheriff's Office for a lot of our warrant initiatives. They do warrant sweeps and warrant task force, that kind of thing, actively with the Sheriff's Office. The focus enforcement on the VPI offenders with parole and probation. We have such a good relationship, and we're so close to district court right here where their office is. If there's an offender they know is in the lobby or waiting to be seen by their agent, DPP will call over here and say they have somebody with outstanding warrants, and one of our officers will go over and pick them up. So it's been a really, really good, tight relationship with them. This is one of our case studies. He was a VPI offender. He was a validated DMI gang member. He actually was not a city guy. His mother happened to live on Silverwood Circle. He didn't really have a long criminal history here, but he wasn't. He was a danger on the streets, and he had an outstanding warrant. So just really through concerted efforts and through a lot of research with our intel department, and I think probation and parole, they pulled up this picture, the one on the right with holding the child, where he was at a zoo in Carroll County. So they kind of, the intel made the connection with Carroll County, found out that the mother of his child lived in Carroll County, made some connections there. She wasn't really happy with Joseph Wright. She gave an address for a cousin. Anyhow, through a lot of connections and a lot of kind of intelligence work, they ended up finding an address, and we worked with the Carroll County Sheriff's Office as well as the Maryland State Police in this apprehension. And we went in to serve the search warrant and serve Mr. Wright. There were I think 8 guys in there and 2 other subjects. They warrant checked all the people that were in there. So they ended up picking up 3 people. There were 2 other guys who were in there with outstanding warrants as well. That warrants, they were Carroll County guys. But just kind of a good coordinated effort. And we definitely really do cross, county lines, and so it was good. Talk a little bit about prosecution, working with the State's Attorney's Office and the U.S. Attorney's Office, especially on weapon and drug charges, like we said. The community, we have one, through the Safe Streets program, we have one community prosecutor that's dedicated to try the cases for, especially for the VPI offenders or any of our habitual offenders in the city. Technical difficulties. I don't remember what comes next.
P&P actually.
Oh, is it? Okay.
But Sean. There we are.
I'll let Sean speak.
Thanks. So every month we get a statewide data that comes out for every office in the state of Maryland. And based off of those numbers, I supply them to Patty and Beth over here. So currently we have 846 offenders under supervision that report to the Annapolis office. 67 sex offenders that report. Now, they don't live all in Annapolis City. My Annapolis office supervises from Severna Park, Arnold, Cape St. Clair, down to Annapolis, and in all of South County. So we go all the way down there as far as our territory. 67 sex offenders, 83 domestic violent offenders, 71 in the Violence Prevention Initiative, and there currently are 18 VPIs.
There wasn't been arrested since January, Sean, sorry.
Okay, so 18 of our VPI offenders have violated since January. So our numbers, how we choose to supervise in this office is a little bit different than how the rest of the state chooses to supervise. What I've done is I've taken an agent and said, okay, you're going to be a dedicated agent to deal with intake. So from the time they come into our office, they do an intake with my intake worker. They then, if they're going to be supervised in Annapolis, they meet that specific agent either that day or the next day. That agent has, I'd like to say the 30-day golden rule, that you have 30 days to get that offender assessed, put in the correct status, whether they're high, moderate, low, mod, or low. Make the referral to a substance abuse program if that's required, mental health, whatever the special conditions set by the court. Make sure you make that referral and you follow up. You then bring them back a second time and you meet with them. You see what they've done. Give them about a week to a week and a half. If they haven't done anything, you make sure you push them again. Bring them back. If by the 30 days, if they haven't followed up and pushed toward what we've told them to push toward, we're notifying the court and requesting that we go back before the judge. Because what happens is in the old days, agents got this new case, and here comes a new case, and now I have 150 other people that I'm supervised, and that guy sort of gets lost, and now that person's an addict, and they're out there using, and we've already lost them. So we're getting out of that mentality. So then, once they're assessed and they're doing everything they're supposed to do, then they go to an agent. So I supervise a high caseload. So all I am going to have are high-risk offenders. What I've done is said, okay, we're going to put our attention on our high-risk offenders and our moderate-risk offenders. We won't put as much attention on the low-risk and the low-moderate-risk offenders. We'll see them and we'll supervise their case. But our high-risk offenders, based off of our assessments, is where we need to put it. So I'm going to put more agents in the high-risk category, so that reduces the number so they can keep a closer eye on them. So then that way there's more time spent with a high-risk offender than the low-risk offender, because it's a proven fact, if you over-supervise an individual, you're putting them at more of a risk to reoffend. So if I'm a first-time possession of marijuana and I got a probation before judgment and I've completed treatment and I've done everything I'm supposed to do, but you're still going to see me 3 times a month, you're putting me more at risk to reoffend because, why do you really don't need to see them that much. But if I'm an offender that has 27 arrests, 15 convictions, 4 felonies, you want to spend more time with that individual to make sure that they're being more receptive in the community and they're being more of a law-abiding citizen.
So these are just some collaborative, I talked about the Exile program. We've called 54 offenders in, given the storm warning. We actually did one also in November of this year in the county. The county chief of police wanted to do one where he called in all the BPI offenders and had something up in Glen Burnie. So it was a state, county-wide participated in that one as well. We also have something called the Joins program, which is juvenile offenders in need of supervision. Since its inception, we've had about 115 juveniles that have qualified for the program. These are first-time nonviolent offenders. Instead of going through the route of the system, we've kind of developed our own program here, modeled on other, I think it was a Baltimore County program. And it's a diversion program for juvenile offenders. Officer Smykel is running it. They come in, they have a hearing, they're given community service hours, they're writing a letter to the victim. The officer meets with them and kind of decides what their program is going to be. I think they're usually in the program for, is it 90 days. And upon successful completion, we hope they don't reoffend or get rearrested. But diversion programs are really big and really good because they keep kind of a nonviolent offender, a kid that maybe deserves a second chance, out of the system. And there are stipulations to it. I think that the victim has to agree to it. So there's a bunch of stipulations to it. So it's not that we just start screening everybody in, but it's proven pretty effective. And we also try to really get the parents or the guardians involved in the program as well to help the kind of kids stay on the straight and narrow. So I talked about warrant initiatives. We work with the Sheriff's Department, the county police, again, Department of Juvenile Services and Probation and Parole, and the police department. We expedite the VOPs. You've seen that other stuff is violation of probation. We expedite any of their violation of probation warrants. They're also received arrest notification very immediately. We work with the Maryland Capitol Police and also Department of General Services because some of their area is over by those state buildings over there. That's their jurisdiction. We enhance patrol with them and also do a license plate recognition initiative.
And then here's the good news. Since the start of Capital City's Safe Streets, 45% reduction in crime and 63% in violent crime. And that's through 2013.
Mm-hmm. So it's Part 1 crimes. It's all the Part 1 crimes have seen a decrease. The UCR, the Uniform Crime Report, started keeping those in 1975, and that just kind of shows what's happened with it since the inception of the program in 2007, but also kind of where it was way back when in 75 for Part 1 crimes. So, any question?
I see the statistics going down. I guess my question is, when you talk about the part of the county that you deal with, criminals move. They don't stay where they're gonna be caught. And for example, I'm a lifelong Annapolis resident who now lives in the North County. In North County where I live, I didn't hear you mention, when I go to Glen Burnie, I see everybody's son, daughter, niece, grandchild that I ever grew up with in Annapolis.